The incompetent ones stay behind at the office. At least we figured out you couldn't make it before we even got there. Alex, my grandson, had set off for his company trip but returned home after only 5 minutes. To make things worse, his boss, Brandon, was berating him over the phone. When the call ended, Alex slowly turned to face me. I had a lot of work piled up anyway, so it's fine. Besides, I've been a burden on everyone, so I guess this was bound to happen. He spoke in a low, resigned voice, as if trying to convince himself. It was clear he was mentally drained. Brandon's unacceptable behavior would not go unanswered. Leave it to me. I'll take care of this. You did well. I pulled out my phone, opened my contacts, and tapped on Brandon's number. My name is William. I'm in my 60s, currently involved in investing and managing local businesses. I originally built my own company and worked as an entrepreneur, but when my wife fell ill 5 years ago, I stepped away from running my business to take care of her. I sold the company entirely, leaving me with more than enough financial security. I could start something new, but after my wife passed away 3 years ago, I lost the motivation to build anything from the ground up. Still, people have an inherent desire to be socially fulfilled. While I no longer have the energy to start something myself, I realized I could support companies whose vision I believed in by investing in them. Most of these are local businesses, and seeing my community thrive gives me a sense of joy. Since I'm financially involved, I also get to help oversee operations and contribute to decision-making, which lets me use some of my old business skills. In fact, I've helped turn around several companies that were on the verge of collapse. One of those companies is where my grandson Alex works, and knowing that makes me feel somewhat proud of what I've done. I'm sure my wife is watching from heaven, saying, "You did well." Alex is my daughter's only son, but he didn't get much time with his parents growing up. My daughter, a nurse, lost her husband early on and often worked night shifts, meaning she had little time to spend with him. So for the most part, Alex lived with my wife and me. I take pride in having raised him in his father's place. He grew into a kind and responsible young man, and when he landed a job at one of the companies I invested in, I felt proud. But since his second year there, something seemed off. Even at home, he looked troubled, so I decided to check in on him. "Alex, how's work going these days? You're always working in your room after hours. Work-life balance is important, you know." I always stress to the companies I invest in that profitability is important, but valuing employees is even more crucial. The companies I invest in often have noble ideals but are struggling financially. When they receive funding at the brink of bankruptcy, many business owners become overly focused on generating profit in an attempt to revive their operations. But that approach always leads to failure. No matter how profit-driven a company is, it's run by people. A business that neglects its employees' well-being will collapse sooner or later. That's why I always make it clear before investing, I expect them to take care of their employees. If Alex and others are struggling, that's a bad sign. But Alex just shook his head slowly. Work and life are both going fine. It's tough, but that's normal. I've learned a lot, so of course, I'm busier than last year. He said it with a smile, but it seemed forced. He's always been a resilient kid, so he's probably just enduring it. I, concerned about Alex, pressed further. Even so, you shouldn't overwork yourself. If you break down, none of it will matter. I should talk to your president, Mr. Anderson, and have him review how things are managed. Alex shook his head at my words and said, "Please don't. If they find out I'm related to an investor, Mr. Anderson and Brandon will start treating me differently. And I have no idea how my coworkers would see me. I'll handle this myself, just let it be for now." I had the right to intervene if I felt management was failing. But if exercising that right would make things harder for Alex, then what was the point? After some thought, I decided to ask one more thing. "I see. But you are getting paid for all that extra work, right? You're even bringing work home." How's that being handled? That's one thing they can't afford to mess up. Seriously, don't worry about me. I'm not a kid anymore. I felt uneasy because I didn't get a response right away, but for now, I decided to trust what Alex had said. The president of Alex's company, Mr. Anderson, is passionate about work and pursuing profits, but he has an old school, sports club-like mindset that doesn't quite fit the modern era. I resonated with the company's vision of contributing to society, so after several discussions, I decided to invest in it. He seemed to understand my concerns, so I wanted to believe that he wasn't neglecting his employees. Since I have opportunities to visit the company and attend meetings, I'll be able to assess the situation firsthand. Feeling uneasy, I watched Alex as he headed back to his room. Even though I trusted Alex, my worries didn't go away. Alex's routine after coming home from work is usually to have dinner, take a bath, and then retreat to his room. However, that day, he went straight to his room as soon as he got home. Finding it odd, I quietly stood outside his door and held my breath. I could hear some kind of voice coming from inside. Was he on the phone with someone? I felt bad about eavesdropping, so I stepped away and waited for the conversation to end. But no matter how long I waited, Alex's call didn't seem to be ending. Just when I thought it was finally over, it sounded like he had started talking to someone else. Feeling uneasy, I gently knocked on his door and stepped inside, only to find him wearing headphones and a mic, typing on his computer while speaking. Waiting for the right moment, I said, "That's enough. Stop it now." Startled, Alex flinched and turned around. "How long have you been standing there?" "I'm working right now, so if you need something, can we talk later?" His voice trailed off, meaning there was something he didn't want me to know. I understood that, but I was too worried about my grandson. More than that, I was starting to sense a real problem with the company I had invested in. Working? You just got home from work. And what exactly is this job? Is this even something you're supposed to be doing? Alex's company isn't a big corporation, so although he was hired as a systems engineer, he sometimes has to do administrative tasks or even sales. I was aware of that, but what he was doing now was more like customer service. This was clearly beyond the scope of his job. Making employees work all day and then forcing them to handle calls and chats after hours, what kind of company does that? Some people prefer night shifts due to their lifestyle, but that's a different matter. Making full-time employees do this is unacceptable. Just as I was seething with anger, Alex's work phone vibrated. Is that a work email? Let me see. Come on, don't do this. I'll check it myself. I could tell he didn't want to worry me, but his face looked pale, as if he was on the verge of collapsing. No, I said firmly, something I rarely do, and took his phone to check the email. What I saw made me unconsciously mutter, "This is awful." The email was from someone named Brandon. The message read, "Is your work going smoothly? The most important thing is trust with our customers. Whenever you receive an inquiry, respond sincerely and provide a satisfying answer. Since you understand the inner workings of the company, you should be able to reply immediately. Once you get used to it, I'll increase your workload, so make sure you handle everything as quickly as possible." After reading it, I looked up at Alex. He had already guessed that it was from Brandon and immediately started making excuses. The customer service reps have been quitting one after another lately. It's just until they can hire replacements. I'll manage somehow. I felt like shouting, "Are you kidding me? How could they dump this burden on their employees? Unbelievable." But there was no point in scolding Alex. I placed a hand on his shoulder and spoke calmly. There is no job worth sacrificing your health for. First, eat something and take a bath. But Alex hesitated, but I didn't give him a choice and pushed him out of the room. Then, I let out a deep sigh in front of his computer. I needed to arrange a meeting with Mr. Anderson as soon as possible. With that in mind, I started making preparations. The following week, I was surprised to find Alex at home in the middle of a weekday. Day off today? That's rare for a weekday. The city won't be as crowded as the weekend, could be a good chance to refresh. Or you could just relax at home. I spoke in a light-hearted tone, but Alex's face remained gloomy. I waited silently, and eventually, he started speaking in a low voice. Actually, I asked for the morning off today. I wanted to go to the hospital. A flood of questions filled my mind, so I voiced my concerns. Are you feeling unwell? Why not take the whole day off instead of just the morning? Also, which hospital are you going to? I'll drive you. I knew I was being overly protective, but Alex rarely admitted to feeling weak. If he was saying this, it must be serious. As expected, Alex shook his head. I'm an adult, you don't have to be so overprotective. Besides, since we're short-staffed, they told me to go back to work as soon as I'm done at the hospital. Was it Brandon who told you that? Alex slowly nodded. Unbelievable. What kind of manager forces a sick employee to come in after a hospital visit? Fury surged inside me, and my voice trembled as I spoke. That man needs to be replaced. But first, I need to hear the full story. I reached for my phone, but Alex quickly snatched it away. Please, don't. I don't want to look like someone who can't even stand up for himself. If things get too hard, I'll tell Brandon myself. And if he doesn't listen, I promise I'll talk to you about it. His pleading tone left me with no choice but to nod. I already had a meeting scheduled with Brandon soon. At that time, I'll get the chance to hear his thoughts directly. I would wait until then to confront him directly. However, when Alex returned from the hospital, I discovered something unexpected. I had assumed he was dealing with a cold or something minor. But that wasn't the case. I realized this when he was getting dressed for work in his room. His wallet was left in the living room, and though I knew it was wrong, my curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know which hospital he had visited. I expected to find the hospital card from the place he went to today. As expected, his hospital card was inside. But when I saw the name of the hospital, I was stunned. It was a psychiatric clinic. He had reached a point where he had no choice but to seek professional help. I knew that getting an appointment at this particular clinic was difficult. Even if you managed to schedule one, the waiting time was often over a month, and many patients gave up before they could even see a doctor. For Alex to have gone through all that just to get treatment, his struggles must have been overwhelming. Just then, his personal phone vibrated, signaling an incoming message. It wasn't his work phone. Was Brandon still pushing him, even in his private time? Already feeling restless, I didn't hesitate to check the screen. To my relief, the message wasn't from Brandon. The sender was someone named Emily, and the message read, "Were you able to go to the hospital? I hope everything went okay. Please take it easy today." Was she a colleague? Knowing that someone at work cared about my grandson gave me a bit of reassurance. But my patience had reached its limit. I walked straight into Alex's room to confront him. Enough is enough. Stop destroying yourself for this job. I must have looked furious as I barged in. At first, Alex's eyes widened in surprise, but then he sighed and sank into his chair, saying, "So, you saw it." "My health issues are real," he admitted. "I went to a general physician first, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong. That's why I was recommended to this hospital today." Here, Alex said as he handed me a patient card from a nearby clinic, proving that he had been seeing a general physician. It showed that he had indeed visited a general physician about a month ago. "And you know, I told you about the company trip coming up, right? I've actually been looking forward to it. I don't want to ruin the atmosphere. So please, don't do anything drastic." With that, Alex simply said, "I'm heading out," and left for work. I stood there, holding his medical card, and could only manage to say, "Take care," as I watched him go. Since then, Alex hadn't shown any signs of exhaustion or emotional distress, so I decided to just keep an eye on him as usual. The day of the company trip that Alex had mentioned arrived in no time, and he left with a cheerful smile, saying, "I'm off." Although Alex was surely exhausted from constantly being on edge at work, the company trip should have given him a chance to relax. I also hoped that Emily, the colleague who had sent him a message earlier, would be going on the trip as well. I was looking forward to hearing about his experiences when he returned, but only 5 minutes after leaving the house, Alex was back. "What happened? Did you forget something?" I asked with a smile, but Alex's expression was dark. "Did something happen?" I asked, and after a moment of hesitation, Alex slowly began to speak. "A coworker just called me, saying my name isn't on the list for the trip, so..." Before he could finish, his phone started ringing. When he saw the caller ID, he let out a deep sigh and picked up the call. From the speaker, I could hear Brandon's amused voice. "The incompetent ones stay behind at the office. At least you figured out you weren't coming before reaching the meeting point, huh?" Alex, completely drained of energy, responded with a few half-hearted acknowledgments before ending the call. Then, he turned toward me. "I guess it's for the best. I had work piling up anyway. Besides, I'd been a burden to everyone, so it can't be helped." He spoke in a quiet, resigned voice, as if trying to convince himself. Then, with tears welling up in his eyes, he rushed to the bathroom and didn't come out. Seething with anger, I slowly walked to the bathroom door. From the other side, I could hear his muffled sobs. He was clearly at his breaking point. Brandon would have to face the consequences of his actions. "Leave it to me. I'll take care of this." "You did well," I said, as I pulled out my phone and opened my contact list, selecting Brandon's number. The ringing went on, but there was no sign of him picking up. The thought of him laughing with his colleagues while making Alex the butt of a joke only made my blood boil even more. I had already obtained the contact information for Mr. Anderson, the president of Alex's company, intending to have a direct conversation with him at the right moment. But right now, I had something to say to Brandon. I called again. And again. And again. I wouldn't stop until he answered. Finally, he picked up, his voice dripping with irritation. "Who is this?" "I'm busy. My name is William. I apologize for interrupting your company trip, but I'd like to have a word with you." I spoke as politely as possible, despite my simmering rage. But Brandon showed no intention of changing his dismissive attitude. "If you know that, then maybe you should think about the timing before calling. Judging by your voice, you're just some old man. Shouldn't you know better? Anyway, who the hell are you? Just giving me a name doesn't tell me anything." I could have introduced myself fully right then and there, but I wanted to see how much I could learn about him first. So, I kept my explanation minimal. "You're absolutely right. I happen to have some connections with Mr. Anderson, and I wanted to ask about your company's internal affairs. I understand that now isn't the best time, but I was hoping to arrange a time to speak with you later." Yeah. I'll call you back later. I'm hanging up now." He cut me off mid-sentence and ended the call. The fact that he wasn't even fazed when I mentioned Mr. Anderson meant one of two things: either he was extremely confident, or he had serious issues with communication. Still fuming, I immediately called him back. "Persistent old man, aren't you? I told you to leave it for later." He yelled so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. But I stayed calm and went straight to the point. "If you answer just this one question, I won't call again today. What do you think of your employees? My grandson thought he was going on the company trip, but you told him the incompetent ones stay behind. Is that correct?" There was a brief silence before Brandon let out a chuckle. "Oh, I get it. You're not some business contact, you're Alex's grandpa, huh? What a joke. Imagine running to his grandpa because he can't handle work. Pathetic. Answer my question, what do you think of your employees, your subordinates? My grandson is mentally exhausted because of you. I let my irritation show, but Brandon scoffed mockingly and said, "Calm down, old man. No need to get so worked up. I see my subordinates as disposable pawns. If your little boy can't handle it, we'll just hire a new recruit. That's how business works." Hearing those words, I made up my mind. You're fired. Don't bother coming to work tomorrow. When I made my declaration, Brandon fell silent on the other end of the phone. Then, after a brief pause, he suddenly burst out laughing. Fire me? And what exactly can an old man like you do? File a complaint or something? After thinking for a moment, Brandon smirked and said, "Oh, I know," his tone laced with amusement. "Oh, I know. We have a customer support department. Why don't you give them a call? Tell them, fire Brandon. I'm sure your dear grandson will handle your request with the utmost care." With that, he hung up. I had no reason to continue speaking with him. I had already decided Brandon was an unnecessary presence in the company I had invested in. I immediately started making calls to the necessary parties to take appropriate action. A few days later, at my request, a meeting was arranged with Mr. Anderson, the president of Alex's company. I also invited Alex's colleague, Emily, to the meeting. She would surely provide an honest account of the employee's situation. I had specifically asked Emily to join us because I believed she would honestly share the realities of the workplace. No one besides Mr. Anderson knew the purpose of the meeting, so the others sat there, clearly confused. "So, Mr. Anderson, what exactly is the agenda for today?" "Since you told us we'd discuss it on the spot, I haven't prepared anything," Brandon asked nervously, but Mr. Anderson remained silent. I had asked him to observe and understand the situation before speaking. "I apologize for taking up your time. The reason for this meeting is due to my strong request. My name is William. It's a pleasure to meet you." As I introduced myself, Brandon's eyes widened in realization. "I thought your voice sounded familiar." "William, so you're Alex's grandfather, huh?" Although he maintained a polite tone in front of Mr. Anderson, his eyes clearly showed his disdain. It irritated me, but soon, Brandon would be facing his own reckoning. He needed to be held accountable. "It's a pleasure to meet you, William. Alex is always a great help to us. My name is Emily." With a gentle demeanor, Emily bowed to me. From the message she had sent Alex, I already knew she was kind, but her expression and voice radiated warmth and sincerity. "So, William, why are you here?" "Just because you're Alex's grandfather doesn't mean you have a right to participate in company meetings," Brandon scoffed. Mr. Anderson shot him a sharp glare, but he seemed oblivious to it. I was sure Emily shared the same question, so I finally revealed my position. "I mentioned this to Brandon on the phone before, but I have a special connection with Mr. Anderson. In fact, I have invested a significant amount of money into this company, which gives me the right to voice my opinions on its management." As I slowly explained this while glancing at each person in the room, both Brandon and Emily looked shocked. Unlike Emily, who was merely surprised, Brandon had gone pale, and I could see beads of sweat forming on his nose. "Wait, really? So the person who stepped in and helped when our company was struggling financially, that was you?" Brandon turned to Mr. Anderson for confirmation. Being an older man himself, Mr. Anderson had surely experienced the company's financial crisis firsthand. Mr. Anderson gave a slow nod. Seeing this, Brandon visibly trembled. "I see. Thank you very much for your generosity back then. Your advice on system development was also invaluable. We recognize that it played a major role in stabilizing our company," Brandon said, bowing deeply. Beside him, Emily's eyes sparkled with admiration. So that's how it was. I'd been using this company's services for a long time, and I noticed how much the website and purchasing processes have improved. I was really impressed. And to think it was thanks to Alex's grandfather. She turned to Alex with a smile. Alex, looking a bit flustered, avoided her gaze. When I invest in a company, it's because I believe in it. I contribute financially and offer guidance to help it thrive. That applies not only to the system side of things but also to the company's management philosophy, I said firmly. Isn't that right, Mr. Anderson? I asked. For the first time that day, Mr. Anderson spoke. A company must value its people, both employees and customers, more than just chasing profits. Without that, it cannot survive in the long run. He said. Yet, there is someone in management here who treats employees as disposable pawns, I declared. When I made my declaration, Brandon's shoulders twitched in shock. Clearly, he knew exactly who I was talking about. Desperately, he turned to Alex with pleading eyes. Who are you talking about? I don't know anyone like that. Right, Alex, he asked in a weak voice. But Alex remained silent. Emily was the one who spoke up instead. I'm sure you already know, which is why this issue is being discussed now. To be completely honest, Alex has been under unbearable pressure from Brandon, to the point where he had to seek medical help. Emily's voice trembled as if she were the one suffering, but she gathered her courage and explained. Emily bowed deeply and said, I knew I shouldn't have ignored it, but I couldn't bring myself to act. Please establish an independent committee to investigate this matter. I beg you, and Alex followed suit, bowing as well. Having seemingly accepted his fate, Brandon remained silent from that moment on. In the end, his actions were deemed a serious issue within the company, and an independent committee was set up to review the case. Soon, all of Brandon's wrongdoings would come to light. From what I heard, there were other employees besides Alex who had come forward with complaints. I could only hope that justice would be served for all those who had suffered. During the committee's review, Brandon admitted to everything and voluntarily resigned. I don't know what he plans to do next, but I hope he reflects on his actions and reintegrates into society with a better mindset. It would be ideal if he learns to value his colleagues and subordinates in the future. Lately, Alex has been saying something interesting. Someday, I want to start my own business and contribute to society, he told me. I'm not sure what caused this change in him, but while I warned him, business isn't that easy, I also found his words reassuring. Moreover, Emily seems to be fully supporting his vision. The two of them have been spending a lot of time together lately, and since their bond has grown, I've noticed a remarkable improvement in Alex's demeanor. The future belongs to young people like Alex. If I can do anything to help create a world where they can thrive, I intend to do so.